going off the concept of trauma speaks to trauma. What you carry in your life, oh, the traumas, they don't go away. You can heal them, you can soothe them, you can work with them. But when one is kicked up, it also pokes everything else. Says, hey, everybody, wake up. It's time to throw a party. And this is something that when you segue and you transfer over to veterinary medicine, one of the things that we don't think about is that we go into veterinary medicine going, medicine's awesome. Animals are awesome. Oh, this is going to be really cool. And then what do we see? We see death, disease, and we also often work in a hierarchical system, which has a coercive power aspect to it.
Hi, guys, and welcome to the House Call Vet Cafe podcast. I'm Dr. Eve Harrison. I'm a full-time integrative concierge house call veterinarian in Los Angeles, and I help other vets to build their unique mobile practices on their terms. This podcast is for and by house call and mobile veterinarians, so it is meant to give our community a platform to connect, to share our stories, to lift each other up, and to support each other. Most of us work solo as lone wolves, right? So for me, it's been really powerful to be able to physically hear the voices of my colleagues from all over the world and to get a chance to feel that we truly are part of a community of very real other human beings who get it. While you may be alone in that little bubble of your own vehicle when you're on the road seeing patients, I welcome you to join our community by tuning into our own podcast when you're on your way to your next house call. Whether you're a super experienced house call vet with 30 years of experience, you're a brand new prospective house call vet just looking to get started, or you're house call curious, there will be something for you in this podcast. Each episode, you will hear interviews from other mobile veterinarians just like yourself who are doing unique and innovative things, vets who are sharing their stories, their struggles and challenges, and you can also look forward to hearing valuable information and perspectives from specialists and experts outside of our micro niche. And finally, if becoming a house call veterinarian is something that you've been thinking about exploring, or you're looking for some extra support getting your own mobile practice to feel more profitable and sustainable for you, check out the information in the show notes about my course and our above and beyond supportive private community for members only, plus our monthly group coaching sessions within the House Call Vet Academy. You can also check out my free public Facebook group, which is also called the House Call Vet Cafe, the same name as this podcast, and which is a warm and cozy community for mobile vets to support each other in professional and personal development, in creative entrepreneurship, and in friendship. So thank you guys for spending time with me today. Let's dive into the episode.
All right, everyone. We have an amazing guest today. It is Kadeth Darkstar Pozzesi, LMFT RVT, who is a retired RVT turned private practice licensed marriage and family therapist, integrating heart, mind, spirit, body, and knowledge into building healing pathways. His primary populations include the LGBTQA community, domestic violence survivors, and the veterinary community. He is a Reiki master teacher and shamanic practitioner, and outside of work, he is also an artist and a musician. So part of why I'm having Kadeth speak, other than that he's just generally awesome, is that he's been a really important part of Marigold Veterinary, helping it to develop from the beginning as my virtual vet tech at the time. And he also got his LMFT while we were working together. He also spoke at the House Call and Mobile Vet Virtual Conference in February 2022 about trauma as it relates to the House Call Vet, an incredibly well-received lecture. And so I thought it was time to have him on the podcast and get a little more Kadeth in all of our lives. Welcome, Kadeth.
Hi, everybody. To those of you that were at the House Call Vet Academy, I spoke. I totally appreciate you. Wish I would have had time to have some chats and answer some questions. Good to see you.
Well, it was tough also because you had just had surgery. And so you were kind of in a bit of a sedated state, right?
Yeah, a little bit, but you get used to surgery after a while.
Yeah, don't you know it?
Mhm.
So, first of all, I wanted to start out the episode with the question that I always start out with. What's your favorite snack to eat in the car? And I do happen to personally know that you're an amazing and very creative chef. So, do you by any chance prepare any of your own wild snacks and creative things?
Road food? Oh no, no, no. The car is for either stuff like beautiful fresh watermelon or absolute garbage. So
Yeah.
my favorite snacks are, let's see, crunchy Cheetos, really good French fries, or this really cool mochi golden curry snack. It actually tastes like lovely yellow curry.
That sounds delicious. I mean, I had no doubt you were eating interesting things in the car at the very least.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, those are good. I've never heard those answers before. And, watermelon is excellent too. I actually got the idea to put watermelon in the freezer from Aisha. She had a post, and I immediately bought watermelon, put it in the freezer, and it saved my ass during the heat wave that just happened.
That was special, wasn't it?
It was very special. So, can you tell me a little bit about your journey as a vet tech, including and up to maybe your work with my practice? And I know you've retired your license now, but your previous experiences are very rich and I think have informed the sort of incredible insight that you have into what it means to work in the veterinary profession. So, I'd love for everyone to hear a little bit about what that journey has been like.
Well, let's see. I spent 40 years in veterinary medicine. And of course, like many vet techs, my first position was at a really bad day of practice, which, you get hired for as vet assistants or kennel help. And at the time, you learned on the job. This is when RVTs were grandfathered in. There was no board, there was no testing. So I started off in a day practice and then branched out and went into avian exotic specialty surgery emergency. During that time, I studied and took what's called the alternative route and challenged the boards and was able to become licensed. I got to work with some amazing surgeons and avian and exotic vets along the way. And then I decided that one of the problems with working different practices is that the HR department is often the doctor's wife or someone like that, and they have their own idea of what HR actually means. So, after dealing with particular prejudices that are inherent in hierarchical medical situations, I went, let's try corporate medicine.
Oh, great.
Well, they had a good HR person at the time who
Did they?
was, yeah, in a similar world to mine.
Okay.
So, so that was hopeful. Unfortunately, that person left. And as you know, that's where I met Eve. It was at a certain unmentionable corporate practice whose name happens to be that of an herb. So,
Saying it without saying it. I love it.
so, there was a lot of really cool things there. I mean, the level of medicine could be awesome. And as a technician, that is a brutal job. You are the bottom of the barrel and expected to do huge caseloads, huge skill sets. And since I worked graveyards, we were very short staffed and it was special. Yes, I left corporate medicine after getting some really serious injuries and then was working for Eve with Marigold Vet. And one of the things that was particularly cool about that is being able to witness the building of Marigold Veterinary and watching the concept of house call practice being built. And I think even I had some spectacular conversations about when and how to fire a client.
We sure did.
But that is a mentally healthy and smart thing to do. You don't keep clients because you believe there's none left to get. You don't keep them if they're killing you.
Right.
Just don't. It's not
Right.
worth it.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. And definitely, we see eye to eye on the firing the wrong folks for our practice. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for kind of like helping me get on that path as being one of the firing queens out there. And I owe a lot of that to you. So thank
Thank
you as always.
thank you.
And yeah, you are a very interesting guest on the show because you have transitioned in your life in numerous ways and you're passionate about many things. And I wanted to talk first about your shift and your transition out of veterinary medicine and into therapy and what that's been like. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started with therapy, why and how and all that?
I love medicine. I just love it. And although ideally I would have gone on to medical school and been a surgeon, there was not the economic support for many reasons to be able to do that. So while I was working in veterinary medicine, I was aware that at some point in time, technicians wear out. Most technicians wear out within the first 10 years, and I was going on 40 of them.
Yeah.
So I had an interesting experience when I acquired a paralyzed kitten, which made it very clear that it was going to be time to exit the veterinary field. I started thinking about it. And I went, what is as close to medicine I can get? And I went, well, I like brains. So maybe I'll go into psychology and work with brains. And I generally like everybody. So I thought, well, work with people, work with the brain. And that was the basic drive that got me to start studying psychology.
All right. And how has your experience of being a therapist related to your experiences in veterinary medicine? Have you found that the two have spoken to each other in your life? I know you've kind of in your lecture you mentioned this phenomenon traumas talk to traumas. Have you seen any of that in that sort of space in between?
Well, what's really interesting is when you're going to therapy school, you look around, you see why different people go. And a lot of people enter studying psychology because they are utterly broken inside. And that is one of the things that we're warned against is stay in therapy. Don't think you can fix people. Work on yourself. And I'm really grateful that I didn't go in believing I would fix people. I went in to study the brain, study psychology, and how people worked. So, one of the things that I noticed as a therapist is that many people go into therapy with multiple traumas. And, you know, going off the concept of trauma speaks to trauma. What you carry in your life, oh, the traumas, they don't go away. You can heal them, you can soothe them, you can work with them. But when one is kicked up, it also pokes everything else. Says, hey, everybody, wake up. It's time to throw a party. And this is something that when you segue and you transfer over to veterinary medicine, one of the things that we don't think about is that we go into veterinary medicine going, medicine's awesome. Animals are awesome. Oh, this is going to be really cool. And then what do we see? We see death, disease, and we also often work in a hierarchical system, which has a coercive power aspect to it. You have to do your job. Of course, that's normal, but often you have to maintain a one down position from anyone above you. There are many not nice ways to say what you have to do all the time to your boss or to whoever's above you. I bet everybody can figure out what those are. They a lot of that. So, so one of the problems with that is when you have a staff where there's such a hierarchy, there's no time to come together and talk about, hey, the animal that came through the door crashed and burned and died that everybody worked their asses off. Everybody's grieving. Everybody got harmed. There's none of that. It's like, okay, next, 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 next. There's no time. So we take those traumas in and we keep them and we tell ourselves really typical tech thing, we're tough.
Yeah.
So veterinary medicine has a culture of toughness, of just suck it up, get through it. Well, that doesn't leave when you walk out the door. You take that home with you. It affects your relationships. It affects you. It affects how you sleep. And one of the things about trauma is that vicarious trauma, watching animals suffer, trauma from owners going off at you and going, you killed my pet, which I'm sure everybody here has had that happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or here's my money. You didn't do anything. And stomping out and yelling in your face. These things hurt people. They hurt you as a human. And what that does is that reduces your ability to have compassion for yourself and for other people, which is what we call compassion fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
which is built on multiple traumas, talking to each other, being kept invisible. That kind of makes sense.
It does, it does. I mean, it's such a natural connection, I think. I mean, I really feel that anyone who's in veterinary medicine should have a psychology degree. That's the thing that most of us are missing, right?
Well, it would do everybody well to have that in school, is to have that knowledge of, okay, you're going to see traumatized people. and traumatized animals, but you're going to primarily be seeing people that are packing around trauma that goes back their whole life. How do you deal with it? How do you diffuse a situation where someone is triggered? And you may think about it retrospectively and go, huh, that's not a typical reaction to this situation. That person was triggered. The one that goes, "You can't touch my animal. You can't. You can't." You have to pry an animal away from them, and the animal's fine with you, but the person is responding as if this is their entire life, and it may well be,
Mhm.
but the attachment is so intense and so different that you have to know how to reach through that mess and go, "Hey, can you hand me your kid there? Can you hand me your baby?" And sit and pat and say, "Okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and these things I can do in front of you. Can we do this?" And just really soothing to try to settle somebody down and deactivate and stabilize their trauma. You have to have a psychology degree for that.
Yeah.
How much client contact do you guys get in school? How much do you even get one class?
I mean, minimal, minimal. I don't know if it's even a full formal class dedicated to that, you know?
It's probably these are your clients, have your receptionist handle them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Shifting directions a little bit, would you feel comfortable talking about any experiences you've had or challenges you face as a transgender man in either veterinary medicine or as a therapist?
Sure. They are virtually identical.
Yeah.
As a trans person, one of the things that we learn really quickly is society expects something called code switching. And let me explain code switching because you will be familiar with this. You will have seen it in the world. Code switching is when you are one way and you're going into a situation where you are expected to be something else. For example, if you are an intern and you go in to the surgery suite, you are expected to be a star surgeon.
Mhm.
If you're going in to see a client, you're expected to not be tired. You're expected to code switch and put on the right face.
Mhm.
Well, as a trans person who, first of all, you can look at me and go, I can't call your gender unless you hear my voice. I have a non binary presentation. I don't do the right code for trans guys.
Mm.
So, in the therapy community and the queer community and the veterinary community, my presented code doesn't make sense.
Mm.
So, the effect of that on a person is that in general, you are looked at as different, not a team player, something less than. Now, you can be a spectacular team player. Eli watched you be a really good team player on graveyards, and yet you were not treated as one. These are things that I experience, at least in school and in a different place that I work, of not being considered part of the group.
Mm.
This is really typical for a trans person. And I think I pushed the envelope a little bit.
Oh.
So, my experience in the veterinary world as a trans person has included some really serious things that had serious repercussions. Having to take on more cases, having to work by myself, having to deadlift and anesthetize patients from the floor up that were over 100 pounds, having my paralyzed cat, someone attempting to feed him chocolate, having somebody walk up and going, "Do you have anything there?" And being
Oh,
felt and being asked, "Joe, what do you have in your pants?"
God.
So that's what you experience in veterinary medicine.
Mm. Fun times.
One
Mm.
time,
And you're
yeah,
finding a similar thing, even in the therapy world.
I get asked a lot of really interesting questions. Generally, the people that ask the questions rudely don't get to be clients. It's just not worth the bullshit.
Right. Right. Exactly.
The problem is the repercussions.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the veterinary field because I 5 discs in my neck and had other major injuries. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Fun times.
But as you know, and as anybody else out there knows, if there's something that you are, that you need to be, you do what you need to do. You can't live life in hiding. You can't pretend your whole life. Just like becoming a house call vet. You have passion, you have drive, You need to be doing it. You love the things you do. It is part of who you are.
Mhm.
So you jump through the hoops, whatever they are.
All right. I love that advice. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing some of the things you've been through vulnerably. I think that's really helpful and important for everyone to hear those stories and those experiences as well.
It's worth a further discussion on inclusion in the veterinary field
Yeah.
at another point in time.
Yeah. We'll definitely have you back to kind of really lean into this subject, just kind of focus right on it because it's absolutely critical. And, kind of in a similar vein, you're really passionate about hearing people, about letting their truth be heard and validated. And this is like because it's your job as a therapist, but as a person, I mean, just I know you as a person that provides these sort of safe spaces for every oppressed person, LGBTQA, as well as kind of just being this very cognizant person about not letting this sort of toxic positivity, the gaslighting, systemic injustice type stuff infiltrate into healing spaces. And I've, always been very aligned with you in that way. And your influence on my thought process, even in those ways, is very, very clear to me. So I want to thank you for that. And I wanted to hear your thoughts, just speak a little bit about some of these issues, if you could.
One of the things that's really important, and I think this is critical for veterinarians and veterinary staff, is we hear all the time, oh, just have a little self care. Smile and just get through the day. You can do it. And the thing is that's a combination of that is toxic positivity. And it's also a lie because we're taught that we can fix our own wounds with just a little self care. And yes, we use self care all the time. But the stereotypical self-care, "Oh, go get a massage, have a beer after work, run a little bit," that may work for some people, and for those of you that is your self-care, more power to you. For those of us that is not, that is actually a toxic message. What it also implies is that if you're having a crappy experience, you're having a hard time at your job, you're having a nightmare client, that you can fix that by doing something to yourself, which means the onus and the responsibility of the crappy experience belongs to you.
Mhm. Mhm.
That is a really significant type of both gaslighting and a demonstration of systemic power and control. When you become responsible for everything bad that happens, and it is your choice how you respond to it, well, yes, of course it's your choice. But when it is only your choice, then the idea of systemic harm is totally forgiven. Oh, you're working in an incredibly toxic place where the surgeon throws surgical tools across a room at you. It is your choice how you react to that. Yeah, and the surgeon's also being an asshole
Right.
and needs to correct that behavior because it is dangerous, inappropriate, and there is no appropriate reaction to that.
Exactly.
This is everywhere in veterinary medicine. Everything from head techs that go, put the catheter in the way I say. And, once a catheter's in, there's like a million different ways to tape them in. They're all right. But when someone says, no, it has to be right to left and the pink tape has to go on, that is a power play to reduce your sense of personal agency. This happens in medicine everywhere because most of medicine is hierarchical, and hierarchical has an implied power differential. This becomes where we talk about systemic injustice, systemic problems in the field. And this is something which would be awesome for a forum discussion because there are many voices that have never heard or thought about this. And in veterinary medicine, it's quite popular right now to have compassion fatigue specialists. Well, it's interesting because the current theories on compassion fatigue do put the onus on the person who's feeling it, not on the system that is creating it.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to let all of you guys know that Kadeth and I went through a compassion fatigue training together, and I am now a certified compassion fatigue professional. I didn't tell you that I finished the course, but it was pretty shocking as we went through this training how, in the name of empowerment, it actually calls people who struggle in their workplace having failed development. When I read that, my jaw hit the ground because there are times where you're literally abused. It's not failed development, it's that you are being abused and putting that healing onus, like you said, squarely on the shoulders of the person who's suffering. Of course, we're all responsible for our own behavior and how we respond to things, but not solely. Not solely. If we're in an abusive environment, we're being gaslit, we're being abused or systemically oppressed, whether that's in veterinary medicine or outside, in society. And we know there's plenty of that. That is not something you're gonna compassion fatigue certify yourself out of, you know?
So one of the things that we examine along with the idea of that empowerment means you are responsible for all your choices is we look at the wheel of power and control that we pull from domestic violence, we adapt it to the workplace. And when you have a workplace where at any time your livelihood is threatened, your personal well-being is threatened, where you are treated as less than human even, then in a very pretty shiny world, yes, you are responsible. You can turn around and walk out. But if you turn around and walk out, can you feed your kids? Can you pay your rent? Are you so harmed that you can't work anymore?
Yeah.
And this is where we examine the concept of compassion fatigue. It's your responsibility. Make the changes that you need. And let's take a look at systemic changes also
Right,
within the entire industry.
right, right. It's got to be a side by side discussion. You can't tell the individual it's all on them while the whole system burns and, creates impossible scenarios for an individual to try and power through and lie to themselves about, right? There's many times that veterinary professionals, whether it's veterinarians or vet techs, are in situations where they have non competes. And if they left the job they're in, their entire life is going to have to change. They either have to move, they have to, take on a 2-hour commute to accept work elsewhere. And these things are not always possible for everyone. And like you said, maybe you can't feed your family. Your livelihood's at risk. What else can you do if you can't be doing this? It's like these are all very, very valid and important realities that we need to talk about.
One of the other things in veterinary medicine is that there is, it is a small community. Word gets around.
Yeah.
So if you walk out of a job, you may be blacklisted. And
Oh,
that
yeah.
happens all the time. Oh, you walked out of that job? You're not working in these 3 counties. That's it.
Right.
So that perpetuates that again. And when we talk about deconstructing enmeshed power differentials and enmeshed abusive patterns, we also have to examine when it's the onus is on the individual, we have to examine the idea of affluence. Are you so affluent that you can walk out of an abusive situation? Really, how many months savings do you have to cover everything? No, I know tech wages aren't great. And I know that's huge student loans. And so do you have the economics to survive for 6 months, a year without work? Most people don't.
Absolutely correct. Most people don't.
Mhm.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
It's a really, really valuable statement. I think simply looking at the financials and the economics of it, a vet tech is so much more trapped because, a majority of vet techs that I know live paycheck to paycheck, certainly do not have that affluent sort of like cushion to just walk out of a job, and many vets as well. But I think vet techs in general, I worry so much about, the financial position that they're in, that they don't have that power to walk out. And, a vet tech or a vet that's trapped in a situation can do work on themselves to make it less miserable. Of course. Of course. And we can do what we can to change our attitude and to make things as positive as possible. But at the end of the day, there's only so much you that you can change and that you should change. Like, should you really retrain your brain to accept that this is okay and normal and that that's what you should be accepting in your life? Is that really how we should be training people to change themselves to adapt to abuse?
Right. Would you tell your best friend in an abusive relationship? just change your attitude and suck it up and stay?
Right. Right.
No, you wouldn't do that.
And there's so much of that, especially we've discussed this before in the corporate environments, these big, powerful organizations that try, they buy the pizza, they buy the, they give the wellness talks, they hire the compassion fatigue specialists, and they train the people to be good little whatever is that they want. And a lot of the time, this wellness language is coming from the top, from corporate,
Because cheaper,
because it's cheaper. Yeah, keep your people a little,
keep them off balance. Well, see, the thing is that the idea of slap a smile on and power through it. Use the words earlier, power through it.
right,
The concept of powering through it in any kind of medical situation is directly responsible for reducing people's compassion toward themselves and each other. When you are powering through it, you are creating, again, the culture of toughness. Toughness not only includes having some emotional flatness when a client is grieving, when something dies, but it also includes being tough with your body. I can work harder than you, which means that you are disposable because eventually you're going to break.
right. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that may be.
Yep. Yep. You will.
Mhm. Well, this is yet another entire episode that we could have.
Yep.
I think I'm gonna leave a little something, something for our next 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes that we will have you back for. And just before we close up, is there anything that you'd like folks to know about you or something else that you're passionate about just before we close up here?
Oh, let's see. I am really passionate about my recording studio that I'm putting back together after a billion years. I really glad that I'm in a place in life where I can do a little bit more artwork because veterinary medicine and going to school full time, oh, it's just craziness.
It's
So,
just
yeah.
crazy. Can you tell all of us a little bit more about the types of music you play and the types of art you make?
um, I have a computer based recording studio. The function is to be able to do orchestral to fuse with heavy metal.
Yeah.
So that's what I play. And the kind of art that I do a wide variety of art, everything from painting, you see a little bit of my art behind me, to glass work, to ceramic sculpture.
I wanted to show you guys. I've talked about this in another episode that I recorded, and this is my unicorn mala glass beads that Kadeth made for me, which are very beautiful. It's maybe hard to see, but Kadeth made this out of glass.
And what I mean by making that is that glass, each of those beads was liquefied glass spun around a mandrel and decorated. I didn't go buy a bunch of beads and string them. Actually, you make the beads with molten glass, which is a bonus.
Total blast. Yeah, each of these beads are just so ornate and, they have a life of their own. They're just so cool. I love this thing so much. But thank you so much for being here today, and we have a lot more subject matter to cover in the future.
Awesome.
In Yeah, in summary, can you tell me what's your favorite beverage to drink since we are in the House Calvet Cafe?
Okay, well, that changes. And currently it is double milk oolong tea at just above room temperature. Although room temperature has really varied over the past few weeks. Yes, I will still say room temperature, even when it's 100 degrees inside the house.
All right. I need to try some of that. I haven't had any long tea for ages, but that
Right.
sounds delicious.
Try double milk. It is a type of oolong tree that has the back taste of caramel and cream without having any caramel or cream in it.
Very delicious. I need you to try something actually.
Okay.
When I was in the Telluride Mushroom Festival getting married a few weeks ago, I found these candy cap mushrooms, which are supposed to be phenomenal for making sweet desserts, sweet drinks. So I think you need to try candy cap mushroom lattes with almond milk.
Okay.
That's my recommendation to you today.
Okay, I will try that. That sounds awesome. I love
Yeah. I'll have to send you some. I have a little package of them. I'll have to send them your way. But anyway, Kadeth, thank you so much for being here today. Every time we talk and kind of go into these issues, I find myself so inspired and, just really kind of digging into issues that I think are so, so important for all of us to talk about. And I'm really thankful for your unique way of expressing these things and your education and background to kind of integrate some of these concepts as well in ways that many of us are not equipped to do as you are. So thanks again. And I can't wait for our next episodes to be recorded.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me. It's good to talk to you.
Always.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the House Call Vet Cafe. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to miss an episode. This podcast is made specifically for you, so don't be shy if you'd like to reach out and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as The House Call Vet Academy, where I also share more valuable content. If you're interested in learning more about consulting for house call vets or the House Call Vet Academy online course and community, please click on the link in the show notes. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I can't wait for you to join us for our next episode of the House Call Vet Cafe.
If you're looking for help with ultrasound scanning, check out First Opinion Veterinary Ultrasound for independent machine reviews and online and in-person teaching options. FOVU, simplifying ultrasound.